Hello and welcome back to the CTOCon 2023. I'm thrilled to be your moderator for today's panel talk on branding beyond the code, how to create a unique and compelling personal brand in the competitive tech industry. My name is Aima, and welcome. So, in a rapidly evolving tech industry, it's essential to have a strong personal brand that sets you apart from the competition. Today, we'll hear from our panel of industry experts about the strategies and tactics they've used to create and maintain a compelling personal brand that has helped them stand out in the tech world. We'll explore the importance of authenticity, storytelling, and consistency in building a personal brand, as well as how to navigate the challenges that come with building your own personal brand in a constantly changing industry. Our panelists bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and we're excited to learn from them and engage in a thought-provoking conversation. So let's dive in and discover the secrets to creating a unique and compelling personal brand in the tech industry. First, we have Carl Smith, who's the president of consulting at Agile World. And secondly, we have Swish Goswami, CEO at Surf. Guys, would you take a moment to introduce yourself? Carl, would you want to go first?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on this panel. Yes, I'm a consultant, been consulting for about 30 years, set up about 15, 20 companies, startups, managed to make some money out of some of them, which is a bit surprise to people. And I continue, as we were saying before, and I continue to learn. So what I knew last year doesn't help me today. You know, there's bits of it that are still left, but I've had to learn a lot more just to be on this show. Yeah, I have an academic base, but my main thrust is learning and writing. Apart from actually being a consultant, and I normally consult in banking, helping them move from their current way of thinking into new ways of working, challenging the status quo around technology being the servant to delivering best customer value, and actually moving organizations away from dependency upon technology more towards better mindsets and the ability to adapt. Is that good enough?
Awesome introduction. Yeah, so over to you, Swish.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you guys having me. My name is Swish. I run a company in Toronto called Surf. We compensate people for the browsing data they share, and we directly take those insights and work with brands like Netflix, L'Oreal, Amazon Prime Gaming, and HP to provide them user behavior data in a cookieless world. In terms of personal branding, I have been posting content on platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn now for the last 8 years. I was one of the early LinkedIn creators that joined the LinkedIn Top Voice program, as well as the LinkedIn Campus Editor program when I was in college. So have a lot of background within sharing content, building a community, hosting meetups in person. And I've seen a great amount of benefit coming to my startup from that in terms of customers, investors, advisors, team members that have really come from my personal network that I built on these platforms.
Oh, great. Awesome personalities with interesting backgrounds we have here. So moving on to the first question, I would like to ask, how does personal branding in the tech industry differ from personal branding in other industries, right? And what unique challenges does the tech industry present when it comes to building a personal brand?
I think it's really important to be unique and to accept that your unique experience is valid and can be listened to. I think, and it should be shared in a way that is a little bit humble. I think that there's a lot of people that can easily say they are the same as you, but they're not. Everyone is unique. Every person experiences is unique. It's about understanding about how you can share that knowledge with your audience and knowing who your audience is. In my own personal walk with social media, it's always been about how can I give people something that will be of benefit to them, that they can go away with and use. And if I can't do that, then actually I'm just an advertising platform. I'm not really engaging with other humans.
Yeah. So I hear you. I hear you, Carl. What I coined out from what you said is a thought behind the post. So there has to be a thought, an intentional thought that basically carries knowledge sharing behind each post. Yeah, so over to
something unique, because I think if you are a coder, you have been a problem solver. You've solved a bunch of problems that other people haven't had to solve. Now, you wouldn't necessarily give away your work, but you might give away insights, your mindset for how you solve the problem, because anyone can actually learn that, but not anyone can be you.
Absolutely. Swish, would you want to chime in?
Sure. I think, two things as well. Clearly, when you're working in the tech industry, it's typically big problems that you're solving. They're complex problems at times as well. So I think one of the skills that you need to have when building a personal brand is sometimes also learning how to simplify what it is you're building, especially when you're building things within deep tech, whether you're looking at AI, natural language processing, quantum computing. These are things that are very complicated to explain, but if you do a good job at least explaining the outcomes of these technologies and how they impact the everyday consumer, which is really what we do when we even brand Surf, we only speak to what can an average consumer feel when they use our product. That's a great way to even start channeling your personal brand. I think the second thing is it's worth noting with the personal brand, which I again define as a kind of culmination of one's beliefs, ideas, their values, and their vision for where they see the world going. If you are excited about tech, there's an incredible community online, especially on platforms like Twitter and platforms like LinkedIn. You'll find a lot of people in that community that are building their personal brand by actually spotlighting and interviewing other people as well. So when you're building your personal brand, you don't just have to, by the way, rely on sharing your own project or your own interests. You can always create a platform that's built to spotlight other people as well in the industry that are doing cool things.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were speaking, something just came to mind. So there's some constant feedback I hear from people in tech when they talk about personal branding, knowing that a lot of the content that they might really want to put out there has already been put out there. So they're hesitant about actually stepping in, right? How will you address such mindset?
It's tough. I think a lot of people don't get into personal branding and sharing content either for that reason or also because they're scared of what other people will think. When it comes to hey, I don't want to share this sort of content because it might already exist out there. That could be said for pretty much anything at this point. The internet is a very, very big place. And so just because there might already be a thought floating out there doesn't mean you don't share it. And again, you can take a concept that's like, for example, your network is your net worth. It's like a very old cliche adage, right? You could take that and you can still share it and add your own perspective to it. Like, how has that one line changed your life and how you think about your network, right? Like, that is something you can always do, is take cliches, adages, things that have already been beaten down as, cool principles, but then add your own take, your own expertise, your own experience to it. The second, obviously, is, people are scared of what I'm going to say. I think if you're afraid of what other people are going to say, then take the route of interviewing people, because I don't think anybody should be hating on you or anybody should be, pulling you down if you're spotlighting other people in your community. That's a very good and virtuous thing to do.
There's also a good opportunity there to tease out a different perspective. When I write, I often look, well, everyone knows about eye tracking. I did an article a few years back about eye tracking. I didn't write about eye tracking. I wrote about the stealth bomber instead and put a big picture of the stealth bomber on top of the post. But what I was actually trying to get to was the concept of our technologies are all rested in other industries first. Just because we're now using them for a bunch of other things which are very useful to society doesn't mean they didn't start with other intentions. And I just think instead of looking at purely what's there, we look around it. It's like looking at all of the places it might touch us and touch people, that you can actually, discover and uncover new meanings within the information that a lot of people don't. They just republish loads of things that everyone else has already republished. But what we all need from other people is their insights and their knowledge. What did they do with it? How did it affect them? How did it affect their work? How did it affect their working environment? Did it have an impact for their clients or for their customers?
Definitely. So that there's a lesson to be learned from everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I'll move on to the next question. How can professionals who work in the behind the scenes aspect of the tech industry, such as IT support or operations, create a personal brand that accurately reflects their contribution to the organization, right? Knowing that these people are mostly in the back end, right? So, yeah, Swish, would you want to go first?
Sure. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, sure. So, the question is, how can professionals who work in the behind the scenes aspect of the tech industry, such as IT support or operations, create a personal brand that accurately reflects the contributions to the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a ton that you can do. Again, keep in mind, like when you're building a personal brand within a much larger company, you obviously want to make sure that you're getting the proper approvals, because some big companies are, they frown upon you just randomly sharing content about what's happening in the workplace. So it's always good to kind of run some of this by the supervisor that you have, or management ideally. I think, clearly one of the things you can do right away is you can kind of show people what the day-to-day life for you looks like, right? Or one of the things I always encourage professionals to do is at the end of a week, go ahead and just write a summary post, like what happened this week, right? What is one thing that you learned, one thing that didn't go as well, and one thing you're looking forward to next week? It's three simple things. You put them into a couple of sentences each, and you have a post that you can share every week on a platform like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. So that's the way I would approach it, is either doing a very clear picture of, here, working within IT at this company, here's what the day-to-day life looks like, which can be incredibly valuable for people that might want that job. Or you do a weekly summary where you kind of summarize what happened in your week, what you learned from it, what you're looking forward to the following week after.
Absolutely. But I mean, they also have to be careful that they are not revealing like intellectual property and all the sort of information that is, basically for the company.
Exactly.
So, yeah, over to you, Carl.
So I think picking up on what Swish was saying there is telling people what you do. You don't have to tell people the content of what you do, but what I'll talk to people and they go, yeah, our COO says this, and I'm going, well, what does your COO do? And they don't actually know. They don't know what the support team do. They don't. I mean, they know they support people, but they don't know what is entailed in that. And that detail gives them insights into one, is it relevant to what they're doing? If you're building new software based upon a feature set that doesn't engage with customer support, how did you get your requirements? So, it opens doors within the organization to say, well, actually, now I know what you do. You should come to some of these meetings. We should be getting some requirements from you, and you should be getting some scripts and support mechanisms from us. And it's having a better understanding of what people's value is in the organization really actually really starts to build that personal brand, but it also builds it in the person. It makes them feel valuable. And I think that's the first bit, because, people will always have a bad opinion of you, but finding people that have a good opinion of you within your organization is a great starting point to build a personal brand.
Absolutely. Awesome contributions. So I'll move on to the next question. Just like Swish was, said, the very popular saying, your network is your network. So what role does networking play in building a strong personal brand, and how can professionals use in-person and online networking opportunities to establish themselves as thought leaders and expand their professional reach? Kyle?
First one of the day. I was on mute.
Yeah.
So I'm in the first 100,000 users of LinkedIn. I recognized at the outset, before it was bought out, as a great platform. And although the underlying technologies have changed a lot, it used to be searchable on Google, and it's not searchable on Google anymore. It's now a closed network. the underlying concepts are still the same, because it's about having an openness to people. Now, if you're new to LinkedIn, you won't have heard the term an open networker, but that was the original intent, that we were open networkers, that we were creating links with each other so that when we needed skill sets or insights, we could ask each other. It was less of a catch-all for potential recruiters than it is now, and I get that it's changing and it has changed. But I run about 6 groups that between them has about 200,000 members. I get to gain insights by being parts of these groups, and I get to feed in my knowledge. So that that's just one social media platform, and depends on what kind of personality you are and what kind of things you want to learn. I've got a Twitter account, and I go hashtag mining to try and learn things. And I don't assume that I've got the right hashtags. I go off on a journey. Same with Facebook. And I mean, my actual main social media is my blog, and I think I may have said a, a while ago, the first month I did it, I got 8 views, and I was so excited. Now I get about 12 million a year. I'm still excited, but I'm kind of a bit not trying to get into the numbers anymore. I'm trying to really look at who am I engaging with, and am I still helping people? So I think there's lots of potential technology platforms, but the main thing is about deciding what you want to say on those platforms, and are those people that are in those platforms the people that want to listen to what you have to say.
Awesome. Swish.
I think Carl said it well. Nothing to add there.
That's okay. Now, I mean, tech is really fluid, right? Yesterday it was Web 3.0, and today it's AI, right? It's really, really fluid. So, in a constantly evolving tech landscape, how can professionals create a personal brand that remains relevant and adaptable over time? Swish?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously one of the things to do is to make sure that you're staying up to date with what's trending and what's in the news. It's worth noting though, like the best content creators don't just jump from one trend to another trend. They really try to go deep within a trend. So like even when like the NFT boom was happening, for example, like I had a lot of friends that became really big on Clubhouse, and then they took their Clubhouse following and they took that to Twitter, and then they started continuously posting about NFTs on Twitter. And even now they've done it, but they've really cemented themselves as like the major thought leaders in the NFT space, even when the NFT space might not be doing very well or might not be as hot as it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. So that is an approach. You don't always have to just jump into like, oh, now I need to start talking about Chat GPT or Chat GP4 or whatever it is now, right? Like that's not something you necessarily need to do. But again, if you do want to obviously stay relevant, you do need to know, okay, what are the major spaces that are changing in tech, and what essentially can I bring that other people might not be able to bring? And one of the easiest things you can always bring to tech is, again, simplifying concepts. Like, can you look at Chat GPT-4 and say, I'm actually now going to explain what that even means and why a consumer should care about this upgrade from GPT-3? That would be a very cool video that I know a lot of people, especially like my mother, for example, would appreciate, because she doesn't really understand the differences right away.
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen like 50 of that explanations on my LinkedIn. Yeah, so I completely get. Yeah, so over to you, Carl. You want to chime in?
So I kind of feel that Swish has got there before me. I was actually looking up Azure last night because of the changing landscape in tech, where Microsoft is now becoming the innovator, which I find really quite fascinating. I think if we don't challenge our thinking constantly about what we're hearing and don't investigate constantly, we will get trapped in the notion that there are certain kinds of things that are done by certain kinds of people. And actually, human beings are natural innovators. We do that, in fact, to survive. So if you want to respond to a constantly evolving landscape, constantly interrogate what you think you know, and you'll find out that you're probably wrong. What we thought about Chat GPT when it first came out, what we think now, is dramatically affected by the commercial world's concerns around it, around the risks that it creates. If it was on-prem in an organization, they go, yeah, go play with it, do whatever you want. But actually writing corporate emails through it is a big no-no for risk. And so there's a whole load of things we need to really think about as the tech is changing, about how it affects how we work, what we're responsible for, the risk we expose ourselves to. And I think that's really the thing, is to adapt over time, is actually to find out more, to learn, and to challenge our previous thinking.
Well said, Carl. I'll move on to the next question, which is two parts. How can professionals balance the need to maintain a consistent personal brand with the desire to showcase their evolving interests and passions over time? Consistency is something that is, it's a challenge for a lot of people. So, from your own experience, how can they achieve that, and also, showcase their interests over time? Carl?
I think you need to maintain a thread of your character in what you do. I think, I'm probably known for being a bit cheeky, by challenging what's said, and asking really awkward questions. In fact, it's probably one of my greatest skills, is to immediately spot the flaw in anything I get pitched. And I think that's what I tend to do. So my engagement in my brand started in information architecture and user experience, and then moved into scale design, and then has moved into agile. But the underlying thing that people will always expect from me is to ask awkward questions to get useful answers. And I think that's what we need to find. Each person needs to find their hook. Why are they doing this? What is it about the information they're consuming and observing and responding to that makes them want to say something?
Yeah. Swish.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, on top of that, it's also worth noting like what makes people tick. And that's one thing I always look for, even within my existing team, right? It's like when my team members, for example, on Slack are sharing tech articles or tech news in the random channel, I always look for like, why are they sharing those things? Like, what made them share a link to an article? Like, it's actually a kind of a curious question to ask people because, again, people will like and comment on so many things every day. But when it comes to actually taking a link and copying it and sharing it, there was something about it that definitely caught their eye, whether it was the content, the title, the creator. So that's something really cool to unpack as well, and something that I think more and more creators should focus on as they're building their content.
Well said. Well said. So let me move on to the next question. What are some of the common misconceptions about personal branding in the tech industry, and how can professionals avoid falling into these traps when developing their own brand?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is just people coming in and trying to copy others, right, and not really having their own voice or their own identity, right? So like it's very easy for me to come on and be like, oh well, I'm going to be like Casey Neistat, or I'm going to be like Mr. Beast, or I'm going to be like MKBHD and do Google like product reviews, and that's cool. But like keep in mind those creators are constantly posting content as well. So if a viewer had the choice of watching the original thing versus the new thing that is kind of being like it, I'm probably just going to choose the original that I'm very comfortable with. So wherever possible, I would say it's good to be a consumer of content when you're a creator, but it's also sometimes good to just disconnect. Like when I come to like the content that I watch on YouTube, I typically don't watch tech creators on YouTube. I actually watch other creators, like sports creators, or I do try to watch, people that are within the health and wellness space and the fitness space. Those are the types of creators that I follow. It's just kind of cool to pick a totally different industry, see what these people are doing, and then potentially take things they're doing that I like into tech and start to add that to my content as well. So it's a little bit different than just what you would see among common tech creators that everybody would know.
That's really, really insightful. So stay original. And yeah, Carl?
So I think the thing that I've seen most in the last 3 or 4 years that's a little bit disturbing is self-proclaimed experts. It's been happening a lot, and the people who have spent the last 10 years building up those areas of professionalism are quite taken aback when someone who writes something has actually no professional experience in that field. It's like someone doing a review for a thesis, and when you read it, often they get it completely wrong. It's well written, but actually is meaningless. And I think that this is the thing, you need to write from knowledge, not from wanting to gain an audience. You'll definitely get an audience, but it may not be the happy, clappy, thinking you're wow kind of audience that you maybe thought you were going to get. Write from a little bit of knowledge, but don't assume that you know everything. Leave yourself open to be challenged, and I think that's part of the whole personal brand thing is actually to not know some answers. And allow people to challenge you, because that way you actually infill your lack of knowledge, and people feel valued, because actually, as I say, everyone has some knowledge. It's just maybe they don't share it in the way that you do.
Thank you. Let me move on to the next question. So how does personal branding intersect with entrepreneurship in the tech industry, and what strategies can entrepreneurs use to establish themselves as leaders in their field?
I think, we've mentioned this a few times, but I think number one, and I've said this again and again, don't just share what you know, share what other people know, right? Build a platform where you can ideally interview people. It's the best way also, by the way, to network. So if you are an entrepreneur that's looking to meet investors, you're looking to meet team members, you're looking to meet potential customers in your industry, the best way, in my opinion, to meet people is by interviewing them, or just by interviewing people and then getting intros from them after you interview them. So create a podcast, write on LinkedIn, write on Medium, pick whatever platform is ideal to you, but really be consistent. Don't just have a podcast where you're sharing an episode once every 6 months. Try to have a podcast where every week you are setting time aside and you're sharing an episode, or have an article series on LinkedIn where you're sharing even a monthly article every month that spotlights a person that you think is inspiring, has a cool story, and is within your industry. That's, in my opinion, the best way to get started with personal branding, while also being able to grow your network within your particular industry, which can be very helpful.
Yeah, over to you, Carl. Thoughts?
So it's very much the same kind of thing. It's being an entrepreneur is not just about being the ideas person. It's about being the receptive person. Entrepreneurs need lots of other kinds of people around them to make sure that they don't actually cripple themselves with all different aspects of delivering their ideas. And so you're not just looking for people like you, you're looking for people completely unlike you. So I think, what Swish was saying about going out and finding people you respect and trying to interview them is a really, really good way to get beyond that barrier of how do I engage with, CFOs? How do I engage with VC? How do I engage with these people? Because I need their insights and knowledge, but I can't just fill out an application form. They need to see I've got something that they might be interested in as well. So I think that's a really good way. I think the other, as I say, the other way is that constant flow of knowledge. Not you don't give away the farm, but you give away just enough to entice people to ask to have a conversation with you as well, because you've got to make them feel rightly that you have an idea that is worth investing their time in long before you ever get their money.
Absolutely. So, we're running short of time, but before we go, I would like to ask one question, and very important question. So, what are some innovative or unconventional personal branding strategies that have proven successful for professionals in the tech industry?
This is maybe a little bit unconventional, but I think one of the things I did on LinkedIn back in 2016, which went ultra viral, was speaking about mental health in a very open way. I think the tech industry has probably some of the worst stats when you look at mental health and depression, especially among tech CEOs and tech executives. And so I think, I created this hashtag Let's Get Honest, where I just encouraged people in tech to talk about their jobs and just share in the workplace one thing that they're really happy with, or one thing that they wish was a little bit better, without obviously calling out the company that they work at, or an employee or an employer. Just trying to share very openly, be vulnerable about us, in the workplace. What are some of the top fears or doubts that you might have? And that went incredibly viral, because I think a lot of people were happy to talk about something that wasn't just work, but was something obviously that they have to deal with every day, which is their mental health. And so taking a look at that, even in an unconventional way, I thought was pretty cool.
Awesome. Carl?
So I think the recent changes in how I've been working is kind of taken people a bit by surprise. My consultancy got bought out by my charity. And so what we were doing with the charity was we were trying to do podcasts about elevating ordinary workers, people who are doing great jobs just in their day to day. So ultimately, changing the engagement, instead of us pitching to do work or showing that we know what we're talking about by doing presentations, what we started to do was have conversations with other people like us. And actually, that went from, I think we got something like 2,000 views in the first month to we now have just under 500,000 views. And I think that's to do with the content being something that people are interested in. It's also now in 10 languages. So it's about giving people a way to put back into society to show value. And we've also, out of the 30 people that are working there, I think 11 of them got jobs through it. So that's all quite helpful as well. I think it's not assuming, again, that you have to have an absolute way of doing anything. See what comes along, what technologies become available, and have an open attitude to learning all the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Awesome. So at this point, I would say thank you, Swish and Carl, and our awesome speakers and all our listeners. CTOCon 2023 has really been insightful and informative, and I hope you had the very best of your time in this session. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.